So now we're going to move into our fireside chat. We have three amazing leaders who are going to join us up on the stage, and then Linda and I are going to have a nice conversation with these ladies, and we will have some Q&A along with that as well. So I'm going to ask the ladies to make their way up while I introduce them. First, we have Kate Gibbs, Deputy Director of Engineers Labor Employment Cooperative, ELEC 825. I always say I want to see her business card because her title has about 3 other lines behind it as well. She's fabulous, leading the business development and advocating for infrastructure investment to support local 825 operating engineers and their contractors, putting people to work each and every day. She has extensive experience in policy, coalition building, strategic advocacy across government relations and public affairs. As an elected official, she was the youngest woman in New Jersey to be elected to county office. Congratulations. Let's have a round of applause for Kate. Karen Kessler. Karen, come on up. Karen is the founding president and CEO of Kessler PR Group, advising clients and attorneys on high-stakes reputation, regulatory, and litigation matters. I always say, if you need to be in the foxhole, and if something bad happens to come along your way, this is the woman you want right next to you in that foxhole. She serves on the New Jersey Advisory Committee on Judicial Conduct and the New Jersey Motion Picture and Television Commission. She has held leadership roles on numerous corporate and nonprofit boards and is a frequent speaker and media commentator appearing on major national outlets, as well as informing award-winning films. Congratulations, Karen. Thanks for joining us. And last but certainly not least is Lori Roth. Lori is the global managing partner of Prager Metis, overseeing firm-wide operations that shape the organization's strategic growth. A seasoned career in accounting, she specializes in audit and assurance services, as well as litigation support and business valuations, working with clients ranging from closely held businesses to international companies, particularly those based in Israel. And my favorite part about her resume is she serves currently as the chair of the NJBIA Board of Trustees. Congratulations. Thanks for joining us, Lori. All right, so I'm going to pop over here, and Linda and I are going to join, and we're going to have a great panel discussion. Kick us off.
Okay, thank you, ladies. Thank you for coming and for being a part of this panel. I would like to just start by saying that all of our journeys, have taken a lot of different routes to get to where we are. Maybe this wasn't where you planned to even be, like Kelly said when she was speaking. So I'd like to ask each of you to let us know a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I had the unique opportunity to graduate from college during the great economic recession of 2008. So I had majored in political science and public communications, but I didn't really have a concrete idea of what I wanted to do. But fortunately, I had interned for a public affairs firm in Trenton while I was in college, and was able, through those connections, somebody said, hey, why don't you come work on a campaign for a few months, and then I'll help you find something after the election. And I ended up spending years in working as a campaign operative, and then had the opportunity to meet folks on the political side of the operating engineers, and they offered me a job, and so that was how it all went. It wasn't planned at all, but it was through making those relationships while interning. And so whenever I mentor or talk to young people, I tell them, you have to have an internship because you never know what kind of doors it can open.
So internships for you were probably stellar, right? Karen, go ahead.
I also graduated in 2008. Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Not even.
Did we
maybe.
mention she's a comedian too?
Not even maybe, did I? My career. I went to college. I didn't have a friggin' clue what I wanted to do. I majored in economics because I thought it sounded good. What did I know? I knew nothing. I had no idea what to do. My parents had no connections. I was lost in many ways, but I sat down my senior year. I wrote, because I didn't use a computer then, which tells you that it was in 2008, I wrote a whole ton of letters to a whole ton of people that I had read about or thought were interesting, and a lot of them said, if you want to meet me, come see me, and I didn't think that the reason they wanted to see a 22-year-old female was anything other than a job. What else could they want, right, if I was writing to these men? But it wasn't exactly the truth. I got my first job working for a kooky guy named Stuart Mott, who was the head of a large foundation in the heir to General Motors. I worked there for 3 years, long enough to know that I never wanted to work for a crazy guy again, and ended up working for 2 more crazy guys before I found my way back to New Jersey, where I was on maternity leave, and a friend of mine called me and said, there's a guy who's running for office, and if you want, on your maternity leave, you can come in and you'll meet people from the state and you'll make friends. And I walked in my first day with a baby carrier, thinking I was going to nurse in the bathroom. It was I was nuts to even think that was possible. And I walked in and there were 5 people in the office. And I said, hello, I'm Karen Kessler. Which one's the candidate? And they said, go in the back room and introduce yourself. And I did. And it was Jim Florio. And I said, what do you need? And he said, I need to make payroll for Friday. And I said, I guess I can help. And I started making phone calls. And that's it. And then I got a chance to work with a whole lot of you that are in this room, like my friend Maggie and my friend Chris and a whole lot of others, and Sarah, that all worked on that effort. And it turned into a great start. And then after 4 years, I said, I hate government and I'm leaving. And I started my company, and we've been in business for 35 years.
So I don't think my story is that good. Next to Kelly, I think after actuary comes accountant in terms of, boring, straightforward, following the path. My parents were a teacher and an engineer, so I got the practical, logical, and the warm and nurturing from them, and I think that kind of set me on my path. I did go to Lehigh, which was when I attended only 10 years of women. It was 3-to-1, guys to girls. And then I got out of college and went into accounting, which was probably 9 guys to 1 girl. But I kind of just always went with being the best that you could be and being true to yourself. And I think it really started because I liked math, and I was good at math, and what were you going to do with math? And I didn't know what it was to go into business. And I think you have to always be open to learning, and I think that's kind of what put me on my track, is always hearing what other people had to say, learning by watching people do things right, and learning by watching people do things wrong, and making mistakes yourself and learning from them. So I think that's kind of what put me on my track. I really literally started as an entry-level accountant and just kept on going. It never dawned on me. I was always raised that you can be anything that you want to be, and I think that's an important thing for women to know and to feel about themselves. It never dawned on me that I couldn't do anything, so I just kept on going, and I don't think that I am where I am because I'm a woman or in spite of being a woman. I think it's just because I'm true to who I am myself, and that worked for me.
So definitely we feel blazing paths here, right? There's a lot of path blazing that you all have done in your own unique way. Sometimes we look back, and in this room today, we have folks who are just starting out, we have folks who are mid-career, and then we have those of us who've been around the block a couple times, right? And throughout that journey, sometimes maybe you came across someone who helped you on your next rung up the ladder, or then maybe you reached back and helped someone behind you come up the ladder. Share some tips or opportunities about the whole idea of mentorship, sponsorship, how you could be a mentor either formally or informally, but also the importance of reaching back and bringing up that next generation. And Lori, why don't you start this time? We'll go back down the other way.
Sure. So I know I have a lot of friends here from work, and I hate the word boss. I always feel like I work with people now, and even when I was starting at a different point in my career. I think it's really important that we all look for the best in everybody and help everybody else to be the best that they can be. To me, that's the best way that you can mentor. I think you have to learn by watching people, and you have to allow people to learn by watching you. And as I said before, the good and the bad, the mistakes and the successes. I think that if you can take those mistakes and learn more from them sometimes than you can from other things. So I wouldn't say that there's one particular person, but there were many, many people that I learned from and that helped me along the way. I think for me it's been a lot less formal than a specific mentorship program, but I do also think that it comes back. Like you find out sometimes someone will say, oh my gosh, I saw you here, or I'm so proud of what you did there. And I think you don't even always realize all the people that you're helping and that you're touching. But the old adage, watch what I do, not what I say, I think is really critical in everything, because anybody can say anything, but it's your actions, it's what you do that can help other people the most.
I think the biggest lesson you can teach anyone, whether they're behind you or ahead of you, and that women don't do enough, is to learn how to ask. Like life is not, a career's not like being on The Bachelor. Like just because you go with the right intentions, you don't get picked. You don't deserve it. You have to ask for it. And not often enough do women say, what does it take for me to get to be this job? Or what skills don't I have? Or what can I do better? You have to learn to ask that to the people that you're working with and working for so that you know what you need to get to that next level. If you just think that you can watch and observe, you're not going to get it because you don't get how they are looking at you. You really need to ask, and then when you ask, you really need to listen. And I think that would be the lesson that I would teach to anyone. I've had lots of young women I've worked with. I've had lots of lousy bosses that were bad mentors. You know, everybody's had all different kinds of experiences, but if you know where you want to go, the best thing about it is to say, I really want to get there, show me the way.
I think those are all really great points. So I was very fortunate. I had really great men that were mentors and bosses and who gave me a seat at tables when I was very young and listened to me and gave me opportunities. So I felt very fortunate to have that. And as I moved through my career, I also found that women like the ones that are in this room and everywhere I went when I was going to Chamber of Commerce events, industry events, women were constantly rooting for and supporting each other in a way that when I was going through college and even early in my career, I had heard that women can be competitive and women can, elbow each other out and they feel like there's only one seat at the table. And that wasn't my experience at all. And I think here in New Jersey, in the business community and in the government affairs and political world, women really do root for each other and support each other, and it's bipartisan. I've had some really great friends on both sides of the aisle who have just been great confidants and less of a formal mentor relationship, but able to speak about their own experiences, the women who came before. And I came up in a political organization that was promoting and elevating female elected officials before it was kind of the en vogue thing to do. And so because that was the organization I was part of, it never occurred to me that it couldn't be me because I saw women like Diane Allen and Dawn Addiego and Jean Stanfield who were being elevated. So I just feel like I had a very privileged experience, and it's important to me always to reach back to young women. But one of my mentors once told me, I can open a door for you, but you have to have the goods and the hustle to walk through it and keep going, right? And so making sure that you do make asks, making sure that when somebody gives you an opportunity that you don't politely kind of, you have to go after it and have that hustle. But I've just been very fortunate to have people, a lot of them in the room today, who have helped me and rooted for me.
And, all three of you have said how, it's very important to have that support group behind you, right? Without that, you don't have the courage to go out and ask that question. You don't have the courage to bring a baby into a job interview. How would you tell people to get that group together? Like, who are those people that you found to be your biggest assets, like having your back all the time?
I have the best group of girlfriends. They are amazing. They are my biggest cheerleaders, and they would, step in front of a train for me. And a lot of them, I'm very fortunate. I've had friends that I met in kindergarten and first grade, and we still are, talk, and we went through high school and college, and everybody's different, and we still talk. But I've made, in my adult professional life, amazing friends at events like this. Honestly, Chamber of Commerce events, NJBIA events, other industry events. And they have just been the most incredible support system because even though we work in different industries and have different positions, being in this world, having that confidant that can say, well, here's what I did when I had a situation like that. So I just think that female friendships are the biggest life hack and the biggest blessing that I've had, and I could not do my daily life without my group of girlfriends.
What's the question?
How did you find your support group?
Oh. Listen, I think if you're authentically you in everything you do, you find your level or you find your people. I have to tell you, networking is not about linking in with people and, collecting business cards at the end of the day. Funny, your network is sharing. It's like when Michele and I go out to lunch and we talk about our lives. It's like making your clients your friends because you care about them, because you like them, because you have the same sense of humor, because you want to know what's going on with them, because if they're having a crummy day, it affects everything. I mean, it's really about presenting who you are in all of those areas and not being so guarded that you're afraid to really show the real you. And if that's what you can do in this world, it's an incredible gift to have a large group of people around you, and they will all be in your corner when you need them. And you'll be in theirs, more to the point, right?
Absolutely. I think, again, being true to who you are, I think you have to give to get. I think you have to be somebody that's a problem solver that gives a lot to others, and then it comes back to you threefold, especially if that's not the reason that you are giving. Like, I think I just find myself often helping other people, solving other problems, trying to find the best way from here to there. And I think that builds your support system, because if you're supportive to other people are supportive to you. I think I've been blessed to have a wonderful family and girlfriends and a great support system. And I think it does come from giving. I think that what you put out there comes back to you. And just to follow up on something that Karen said before also, I think that being intentional about what you do, not even, it's asking, but it's also setting out to become something. I think, we talk a lot, and I guess we'll talk a little bit about work-life balance and things like that, but when we started, not in 2008, it wasn't a term. It wasn't a thing. You just did, and you went, and I think that my first interview when I was a senior in college, interviewing for jobs with the big eight at the time, that tells you it wasn't 2008, I asked, how long till you can become a partner? Like, that was what was inside. That's how you were driven. Today, if you interview people, you have to say, well, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? You can't get them to say that they want to be a partner or what they want to achieve. I think that being intentional about what you want is important too.
I'd say quickly, someone called me this week and said, would you speak to this person? They're interested in leaving the company. They do what you do, and they'd like to maybe come work for you. So I spoke to the person, and I said, and they must have asked 15 questions. How is it? What kind of people do you look for? And I kept waiting for the question, do you have any openings? And it never came, but danced around it for 20 minutes. What skills are important? And I just thought, I'm just going to let you go out there. I'm just going to let you talk and tell me when you're ready to say, are there any openings? And it never came. And at the end, I said, I hope this was helpful. And she said, yes. And I said, okay, hung up the phone. And I said, that's not what you wanted. I knew that's not what you wanted, but I wasn't going to give it to her. She had to learn how to say to me, I'm looking for a job. Just put it out there.
Right.
So this takes us into, we talked about, relationship building and the ability to just ask and what it takes to build those relationships. But here we find ourselves in 2026 in a very different type of work environment. Many of us work remote, flexible, hybrid, whatever you want to call it, right? We're not necessarily in the office having water cooler or coffee discussions each and every day of the week. Dramatically different, and impact on how you build those relationships. So because we are in this environment, what are some practical tips if you are in this remote, hybrid, flexible world to ensure that you continue to build those relationships? And I come at it this way, right? I think that virtual is really good to get a transaction done, right? If we just have to make a quick decision or have a meeting just to finish something, think transaction. If I'm building a relationship, I know I'm not doing it in one dimension. I need to be like this. We don't get enough of this anymore. So how do we make sure that we're building these relationships, getting our group together, all the resources we need in this new world?
I think, again, you have to be intentional about it. You have to pick and choose when it's important to be in person. I do think it's important to be in person. But I think that even when you're not in person, you have to learn the skills necessary to be effective when you're not in person, even for transactional or whatever it is. I think that you have to remember that as independently as we might work, you still have to collaborate, and you have to use that time to collaborate. It's easier to do that when you've already built the relationships. So when you're actually building them, I think the in-person is important. We also do a lot of training in person. So we bring people together to do training and to interact with other people at their level and ahead of them to be able to build those relationships and learn together. I think that the thing that gets lost in the virtual is a lot of times just learning by watching somebody. So a lot of those meetings aren't happening virtually. I think and encourage people in a virtual environment to bring people into meetings that not necessarily on the docket, but that they could learn from them. Even if they're not on screen and just observing, I think that that's an important way to learn. I think people also can intentionally set up time if they're not in person, even if it's just, I know one of our groups has every day at 1 o'clock, they hop online virtually for the coffee chat. That's not a coffee chat, just the things that you would do in person that you can make sure that you do virtually. Sometimes people sit on the screens opposite each other, working independently, but can just ask each other the question, just like they would if they were in the office next door and wandering in. So I think there's ways to do it effectively, but I think you also have to really focus on building the relationships first.
Get your tush in the office. I mean, really. I have to tell you, truthfully, that's the answer. Look at the boss. If the boss is in the office, you should get your rear in the office. If your colleagues are in the office, you should. I mean, that's where stuff happens. That's where new ideas come from. That's where an assignment pops up. That's where somebody wants to tell you what's going on in their life. I mean, listen, I'm not immune to this, and I have people in my office who have kids and little kids and all that stuff. And we Zoom twice a week, and we have staff meetings and all of that. And it's fine, but it's not nearly the same. And so I would say if you're somebody who's only showing up 1 day a week, that's going to impact you in terms of where you're going in life. And if you're someone who's 2 days a week, it's going to help. And 3 days a week, it's going to be better. And you all know that anyhow.
Yeah,
Unless you're in the office by yourself. So,
and
I
not
think-
just being in the office. You have, getting that water cooler and those collaborative relationships, but also going to things like this. I think so much, especially early on in your career. When I first started at the operating engineers, I had this small little narrow world as a campaign operative in one county. And so when I first started at 825, we were a statewide organization, and I was everywhere. I think a lot of people saw me. I was at every Chamber of Commerce event in the state from Sussex down to Cape May. I was all over the place, but that's how you make those relationships. And again, you have to be intentional. You have to be genuinely yourself. People can tell when you're just trying to network versus you genuinely are trying to create a connection and a relationship. And you're going to trust people more when you know them and you feel like you have a personal relationship when you're dealing with a work or business interaction. So I think I worry about the younger. I think we've gotten to a good place now, a few years after COVID, where there is that hybrid where people are doing some office and some events and some Zoom. But I think especially early on in your career, if you're not in the office and you're not out at these events, how can you get exposure to smart people who know more than you? I mean, I always say during my first internship, I learned more just sitting at the lunch table. All the guys in the firm would eat lunch, they'd go through the Star Ledger and what was on Politic or NJ that day, and I would just listen. I would just eat my Chinese food and listen, because the way that they would think through what was being covered in the Star Ledger and how they gamed out, well, this means that this senator is doing it, and I would just listen, and I learned more from just absorbing how they thought, how they strategized during their lunch than I did through all 4 years of college. And I loved college, but it was such an amazing opportunity to sit at that table as a young woman and get to hear how they processed what was going on in state government.
Putting yourself in this space where you want to make the relationships with people who are in that room, right? So critically important. I know a lot of folks in professional services, and that includes in journalism, Linda, right? Like being out, right, the boots on the ground, being in those communities where you want to build the relationships that when you need the right story, you know exactly who to go to, right?
We have our handful of sources that we always go to, right?
Absolutely. Building those up for sure.
And I do think we have to conclude our chat for now because I'm being told we're all running over time. So I do want to thank everyone for sharing and being vulnerable and putting yourself out there and being authentic and giving these good tips. But you're all great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.